Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview Texas A&M and Penn State in the NCAA tournament. That game is going to be in Des Moines on Thursday, 9:55. You can catch that on TBS. The predictive computers, and we use Ken Pomeroy, Bart Torvik, ESPN's BPI, and Jeff Sagarin, and average those. Those have Texas A&M as a 3-point favorite with a 63% chance to win. Blake, I'm going to start with a mini rant here.
Oh, boy.
What the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee did to Texas A&M is illegal in several states. Not just giving A&M a 7 seed when I thought A&M should have been a 5. It matched A&M up against Penn State, a 10 that should have been probably an 8. And oh, by the way, you get Texas in round 2 if you win that.
Yeah, that's that's where the biggest problems come in my opinion, is that it's not just that you're a 7. We're past that at this point. They're a 7 is what it is. But it's who you're matched up with. Like, you're matched up with a team that I don't think a lot of people want to see in this tournament. And you and I were talking about this before we started recording. Like, Penn State's a team, in best case scenario, I could absolutely see making a run to like the Elite 8. Now, on the flip side of that, I could say the same thing for Texas A&M, but it's just which team now comes out of the spot, and I don't know, man. Texas A&M got screwed. We talked about it, and I think the matchup is what's the bigger issue. Not just the fact they got a 7; it's who they're matched up against. And man, this is a good Penn State team, and I know people. We know how it works, Chris. SEC versus Big Ten. Those conversations are had all the time. SEC people don't love the Big Ten, but this is one of those teams that you can't just chalk it up and say they're just a Big Ten team and they're overrated. You can't do that, because when you watch this team play, they are dangerous, and so that makes for an interesting setup here. So
let's talk about A&M. We got to see the Aggies up close as we covered the SEC tournament from press row. Of course, we've watched A&M all year. Just a really good, solid team. A&M kind of came into its own in conference play, had a rough pre-conference schedule. I think went, 6-5, something like that. Had a couple of quad 4 losses, but this is the team with some veteran guards and Wade Taylor IV and Boots Radford and Henry Coleman III. A solid big. He's not a rim protector, but he's really good. They've got depth. They can play 8, 9, maybe 10 guys if they need to. Buzz Williams, one of the better coaches around. They can really get after you defensively. They did that more in conference play probably than pre-conference. This is a team we have loved for most of the season in the Aggies.
Yeah, I want to make sure that's reiterated. We've been very high on the Aggies even when people were not high on the Aggies. So want to make sure we say that up front. We have been, and we've seen what they've become, and we understand they're not a 7 seed team in terms of how they're playing, and they do just kind of. There's nothing with Texas A&M that just completely jumps off the page at you. To me though, it's because they do a lot of things well, and that to me that's a good team. Is a team who can do a lot of those important, good little type things very well. Defensively, you know how it is. You don't want to play them because of how they play that side of the floor. Offensively, they're going to be full on attack mode, trying to get to the free throw line, and that's always an element in play here. Like we said, that's, I think, still important, even though they have guys that can score in other ways. They are a team that, look, free throws are a big part of their success, because that's just how they play. They are, like we said, an aggressive sort of, attacking type team. Chris, I don't know if you knew this, but they finally eclipsed, UT Rio Grande Valley in terms of free throw attempts per game. So they do officially now lead the country in free throw attempts per contest, 25.4 free throws a game. So that's how many they're attempting. So I think you have to certainly look at that here and understand that is a big part of this for A&M. Tournament games can be called differently sometimes than SEC games. We say that all the time. So can they get those same opportunities? If they do, I really like their chances in this game. But on the flip side, Chris, I'm sure you've looked it up. Is Penn State a team that fouls a ton? because
Let me give you the stats for that.
yes, because I think I know the answer.
Well, I've lost my spot on the screen here. Okay. 67th in the country in terms of free throws as total points allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in a good way, I believe.
So,
Yeah. In fact, teams shot, to put it more in terms
I've
that
got
are
the
easy to
number.
understand. Yeah, teams hit 374 free throws against them in 531 attempts.
So Penn State is 53rd nationally. They only commit 15.3 fouls per game. That's compared to most SEC teams, right? I feel like sometimes that number is kind of high. Um, I think that's at least worth noting here. So A&M trying to get that opportunity. I think that's something you circle in this game. Um, just from a statistical standpoint, it's a team in Penn State that has not really fouled a ton relative to its competition. So something else there, I look at with A&M, but I do like just we've talked about it, the Taylor, Radford, Dennis, Coleman, Marble, but then you're getting some contributions from the other guys. So I like the overall depth here of this A&M team heading into a tournament type setting. Um, yeah, it's just that they do a lot of things well, and getting to the free throw line, I still think will be important. So,
And it's not just not fouling. It's who doesn't foul. Jalen Pickett has played 1,278 minutes. Seth Lundy, 1073. Andrew Funk, 1203. Cameron Winter, 975. Look, I would presume Winter plays 25 minutes in this one. Like, have you ever seen a team with four guys that have played that many minutes at this point of the season?
it's not bad, is it?
And you know how many times they have fouled out combined?
I think it's 5, isn't it?
Three.
3. Okay. Yeah.
The whole
So,
team has been disqualified 7 times all season.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. So like to think about this, like that is such an interesting setup when you think about that, because that's a very important part of this game. Like I'm fascinated now just knowing those stats. Like it makes for an interesting setup for A&M. Of course, I know we're about to get to Penn State, which there's also a thing that Penn State does very well that will probably put some pressure on the Aggies. So
yeah, boy, Penn State. Penn State got hot at season's end, got to the championship game of the Big Ten title or the Big Ten tournament, darn near knocked off Purdue. Went from out of the tournament the last couple of weeks to very safely in. You look at the best players. Jalen Pickett, who was first team All Big Ten, averaged 7.3 boards, 17.9 points. Shot 38% from three, 77% from the line. Seth Lundy shot 81% from the line. Andrew Funk, 86%. Both Lundy and Funk shot 41% from three. Winter shot 41% from three, 70% from the line. Now, again, they don't get to the line a lot, and they're not a very good rebounding team. They got out-rebounded by 2.5 a game. But my goodness. Here's two other things. What is it that I say I like in tournament games? I like teams that shoot threes. Not only does Penn State shoot them well at almost 39%, it hit 364 of them. That's, 10.5 a game? And guess who, Blake, is number one in the country in Ken Palm's experience rating?
who would that
Penn
be,
State.
Chris?
That would be Penn State. So this is a nightmare on two fronts. You get a team that shoots threes at a very high efficiency and hits a lot of them, and you got the most experienced team in the country, according to Ken Pomeroy.
So what you're saying is, Chris, having a guy named Miles Dredd on your team is kind of fitting here for Texas A&M.
It
Like Penn
is.
State has, they're dreading this matchup. Yeah, man, that's why for anyone out there, okay, and you were watching, I know, maybe a lot of A&M fans didn't necessarily have their eye on Penn State, and let me tell you, I didn't have Penn State anywhere near my potential opponents list. I think for A&M. Now I may have, I don't think I did though because I was not expecting that matchup. But yes, like they have to me, and that's why I said earlier, kind of the Elite Eight thing. They have a lot of the elements you need for a team getting hot at the right time, having the elements that you you almost see in a lot of these teams that make a run. It feels like Penn State has that. I'm pulling up the stats here now. We wrote like they're 10th in the country 3-point attempts per game. So they shoot 27.7, threes per contest. But like you said, Chris, they're making them at a very high rate, 38.5%, ninth nationally. The experience effect, but but they do rely a lot on the three, right? And what's been, the thing we've heard a lot about teams like Alabama. I'm going to use Alabama as an example. I don't think this year's team's a good example, but in the past, that's been the knock on Alabama, right? Some of the previous teams they've had there. It's all about the three. If they're making threes, great. If they're not making threes, they're in trouble. Is that the case here for Penn State? Because, I wonder what that looks like in terms of how they're playing here. And I've here's what I've done. I pulled up the games they've lost to see how did they shoot in those games. I mean, they still shot pretty well, and in a lot of the games that they lost. So it's like, man, it's hard to really look at this because they are also finding ways to win too, even if they're not hitting double digit threes. They're finding ways to beat pretty good teams. And so it does make for a very interesting setup here. Jalen Pickett, I think, could be the best player on the floor in this game. Not to knock Wade Taylor because I think he's right there, but Pickett's tremendous. Obviously an older guy. Is what's his fifth season? He was at Siena, doing a lot of good things at Penn State, kind of leading that team. But yeah, I mean, how often do you kind of look at this where you've got Funk's hit 102 threes. Lundy's hit 88 threes. Dredd's hit 55 threes. Pickett's hit 44. Winters hit 35. So yeah, I mean, these are guys that are going to put the ball in the air. So the question here becomes when you have a fantastic game planning coach and Buzz Williams, I want to know, like, what do they do defensively? How do they make sure that Penn State does not shoot the ball that well? And that's where I think the perimeter defense for A&M, Chris, here's another thing I think we should look up on the fly, and we're going to do it right now. Now, it's hard to do this because the SEC is not a great shooting league. But how did Texas A&M perform against truly outstanding shooting teams? Well, Alabama's a good example, right? Alabama went 7 of 36 against A&M in the regular season finale. Was that Alabama missing shots? Was it a combination of A&M's defense? I would say it's both, right? Who else shot the ball pretty well in the SEC? Missouri. A&M, Missouri shot 9 of 26 in that game that A&M won at Mizzou Arena. I think they played another time. That was back in January. Missouri went 7 of 31 from three in that game. So again, there are elements there where if you look at the game planning aspect, and of course we haven't had time to go back and watch any of those games or anything, but against some of the better three-point shooting teams, at least in the SEC, which I think that's a loose term, Chris.
Not many of those.
Not many of those. They at least did some good things. So, I say all that to say this is easily one of the best first-round matchups in this entire tournament, and the reason why is it probably shouldn't be happening, but it is, and what a setup we have here.
Yeah, look, people always ask me, like, who you taking to your Final Four, and especially I get asked that before the tournament. And I say two things. First, let me see what the bracket looks like, and second, give me a little bit of time to study the teams that I didn't watch all year. If you told me a week ago, what are you going to do with A&M? I'd said, I'm going to guess I'm going to have A&M in the Elite Eight, maybe the Final Four. Blake, when I look and I dove into this matchup, it is everything that I would have hated. Penn State does not foul. Penn State shoots a bunch of threes. It hits a bunch of them, and it's got a ton of experience. Like they could have given. You look at the other 10s: Utah State, Boise State, and who's the other one? USC. Like yeah. you could have given A&M any other 10 seed in the field, yeah. and I would have picked A&M probably without hesitation. Utah State might have been the one where I might have given it some thought just because of the 3-point element. Utah State hits them too. I'm going to go on another mini rant, okay?
I knew this would be one of our longer previews. I just knew it was going to happen.
These tournaments don't mean anything to the committee other than who wins, best I can tell, which is stupid. That is a sample size of good basketball that you need to use Either they need to start backing up the championship games and giving the committee another day or two to pick these, or move the selection show back. I think it's the first, because then if you move the show back to Monday, then you don't have much time to play. Play these games on Saturday. Give the committee a full Sunday to think about it, because this is how you end up with screwy stuff like this that just should never happen. And it is abysmal when you do this to decide a championship. This is awful form. I know TV dictates everything, but if you're going to play the games, make them count for more than just who wins, because this is how you arrive at absolute stupidity, which is what the committee did here.
With all that said, this is tough. I in the right scenario, I could see both these teams in my bracket, like in the Elite Eight. I just wonder. Yeah, I don't know, Chris. I don't know if you have a better feel than I do about this, but like I go back and forth on this game a lot, because I do not love this matchup for Texas A&M.
Like,
Like you
I'll
said,
be honest, I'll cut to the chase. We try to be honest. If you take the names off the jerseys, just say, this is this team, this is that team, this is what it did. Penn State has got everything I look for in a team. Now, look, Penn State could go 5 of 38 from 3, and Texas A&M could win by 20. That is a possibility.
Yeah.
But we're just guessing based on what we've got. And stylistically, I hate the matchup. I did not anticipate picking Penn State in this game, but the more I looked into it, that's where I went. And this is not hating Aggie fans. I love your team. I really do. I just have given you 2 minutes of separate rants on why what the committee did to you was wrong and why I would have taken you in other scenarios. But you look at the matchups, and I just don't like this one.
Yeah, I mean, think about this too. We didn't really mention it, but A&M really good at forcing turnovers and getting some easier offense out of that. Penn State, tremendous taking care of the ball. So it's just, you're right. Like the more I look at this, like it is every area you feel like Texas A&M can exploit, Penn State is very good there. They're the third in the country in turnovers per game, only averaging 8.8. Now, again, so you can look at that and say, well, maybe they haven't seen a defense like A&M. And again, I think Buzz is one of the best game planning coaches there is. Like, again, being there at the SEC tournament, I'm watching Buzz and his staff two seats down from me, breaking down the game plan for their next opponent, which would have been Arkansas at the time. So, yeah, like they're all in when it comes to game planning, and they do a great job. But and I know this is going to be kind of a weird thing to say, Chris, but like to me, how this game is called is going to dictate a lot, because that to me is, again, what A&M can do to get to the free throw line. Penn State, not a great defensive team. Like they don't force any turnovers too. I think that's important to note. It's almost the opposite, right? I want to say Penn State is, let me look this up. And I know, guys, this is one of our longer ones, but I had no doubt this would be, because this is one of the more interesting matchups out there. I'm trying to find Penn State turnovers forced per game. I know they're really low on the list.
It's about 8 or 9.
Yeah, but I'm trying to see.
Okay. They are 6th in turnover percentage.
Here you go, Chris.
13.7%.
There you go. 351st nationally in turnovers forced per game. 8.63. Only one team turns teams over less, and that's San Jose State. So at least A&M has that going for it, right? You don't expect to have any turnovers here. So all that to say, again, I've been on the Texas A&M bandwagon for a long time. I feel like I was the first one on there trying to pulling people onto it to get them to join. I'm with you. I hate this matchup. I do not like it at all. And I just feel like the experience, if A&M, if the way this, I know, again, it's the way this game is called, to me, will dictate so many things. I just don't love the matchup for a hot 3-point shooting team that looks like they're playing as well as anybody right now in Penn State. So A&M fans, we've ranted about your team and how much we love them. And I know people are getting on me for picking against them in the SEC tournament in one of those games, but I don't love the matchup. That's kind of what it comes down to. And this is just, this is who gets this game to play the way they want it to play. And I feel like Penn State maybe has a few more pathways to get that to happen than A&M does. So,
yeah, and again, this is the second year in a row the selection committee has really done A&M dirty. I mean, it's bad. But anyway, all right.
I think it's worse this year than last year. Just my opinion.
Oh,
I think
I don't know. Last year was pretty bad too.
I think this was a worse because now they're in this position playing like I almost think this year is worse. Just my opinion. So,
all right, Aggie fans, send your lumps of coal to the selection committee.
not to
We're
us.
sorry we don't. We're
To the
sorry we
selection
don't have
committee.
better news for you. We try to keep it real here, and we just we
But
don't
listen,
like it. But anyway,
let me say this: if A&M
hey,
wins,
but if A&M is in the Elite Eight, that doesn't shock me either.
yes,
But
the winner of this game, don't be afraid to put them in your Elite Eight. There's my advice to you. And I'm sorry, Texas. We'll be nicer to you when you join the SEC, but don't be afraid. The pathway is there for Penn State or Texas A&M, I think, to make the Elite Eight. So whoever wins this game, again, we don't know. We're telling you what we think of the matchup. But whoever wins, don't hesitate to think about the possibility of winning your bracket solely based on taking one of these two teams very far. So
21 minutes on a single game basketball preview.
Well,
Is
you
that
know
a
what?
record for
Hey,
us?
yes, it probably is, but this game I think warrants it because
Yes.
this is one of the best and most fascinating matchups in terms of the strengths of each team of any game in this tournament. So, absolutely, it warrants it. Yeah, absolutely. So,
All right. He is Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris. Thanks for watching. We're previewing every single SEC team in its NCAA tournament matchup. Best way to do that, hit that subscribe button. You don't miss a thing that way. And if you like this, hit the like button. That helps our analytics a bit. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon with another SEC Hoops video.